It's October the 13th, 2007, 2032, sunset 1815, weather clement, winds 8 miles per hour, visibility moderate, pressure 1,266 millibars and rising, relative humidity 63%, temperature 10 degrees Celsius, and pollution low. We're gazing at the new moon. It doesn't look or sound like it did yesterday, or as a matter of fact, the day before that. But as I speak, we're adapting to it anyway. We can't help ourselves. It's in our nature. We're seeing it for what it really is, aren't we? In this moment, somewhat artificial, almost the same, but strangely different. It seems, as I sit here, I've already grown accustomed to this new moon's otherness and actually feel quite at home in its presence. Did you know it's written in the very stardust that created everything, the same stars that once shone down on the outside world that live on within us? It's written that everything is connected. The stars, the creatures, and us. And that is why we must stay different and stick to our own goals and jobs and skills so that equilibrium is maintained. But what if those species that wish for change and fast need it now? Who want more skills than they have already at this time? What of them? As darkness surrounds us, in the here and now, we know the night time is the right time for thinking differently. Our perceptions play with our senses and are easily altered. So why not explore our intuition and immerse ourselves in the universal current of life? Let's linger in this moment for a while, and at a later point allow the dawn with its light to lull us back to our boring, rational minds. We shall stay here in the shadows. Nothing is discovered by following instructions after all. You have to stray off the path and think for yourself. Penicillin would never have saved our lives if it hadn't been for a window left open in a rundown English laboratory with a mouldy petri dish lying around just waiting for an unsuspecting bacterium to float in and create history. A happy accident nonetheless, which a sterile lab would never allow. So, as we all sit here in this ephemeral pavilion, which has risen from the ashes of its ancestors, what are those other species that live outside, around it, with their specific skills and jobs? The worms underneath us, that right now are making their nightly vertical migration to fertilize our soil. Or the Daphnia water insects that keep the Serpentine in motion and stop it from choking on pondweed. Or the midges and moths that flit their one last breath before winter takes hold and they hibernate, migrate, or die. And the bats. What about the bats? Those crepuscular creatures that live their time in the air around dusk and dawn, patrolling the night sky and keeping the planet in order. In fact, 20% of all mammals are bats, and many of them see in sonar. They're forever sending out echoes to see what reflections they get back, creating a total visual image right down to the cat's whisker, out of sound. There are bats outside now. I saw them on the way in. I knew they were outside, their chirps negotiating the cluttered environment of the park, never hitting objects or each other as they hurl themselves at speed upon their prey. already adapting to the new shell-like man-made structure that houses us tonight. Another obstacle to orientate is they go about their nightly business. And in the time I've spoken to you, one of those bats, a pipistrelle maybe, could have already gorged 3,000 midges and may well eat up to 3,000 more by the time we leave here tonight. Culling to keep the equilibrium? They truly are a perfect natural design, honed for their specific task over millions upon millions of years and still honing. As our species burns the candle at both ends, trying desperately to catch up with the others with our technological experiments, it would appear we, being about 295,000 years young, seem to realize there's a lot of lost time. And if you listen carefully, you'll hear there's a bat in here now, trying to fly around the space, this new night within a night that we've created. But for some reason, in our space, we can hear the bat's call. In this new time and place, the sound is present and not a silent echo. Could it be we have finally chosen to listen to a different way of being? Are we tapping into an old craft, unveiling an until now hidden talent, a different unused skill, dare I say it, other sense? A sense which allows us to be a different way and absorb our environment in an entirely new way of thinking. Surely we should develop this skill and see where it takes us. It could be rather useful. We should follow the bat's example. After all, it was they who took a flying leap with hands and finally, through millions of years of trial and error, developed hand wings. So why not now just close your eyes and listen? Listen to the darkness. Listen to the black of the night. And soon enough, you'll start seeing again. But this time, seeing in sound. Seeing as a bat. And as we listen in our mortal darkness, it starts to sound clearer and more alive. As the night unveils a whole new parallel world. We hear a greater horseshoe bat, the Europe's largest, echolocating with its bisonar. It's been flying around this space since the start of the evening and has already familiarized itself with its new surroundings and wouldn't dream of tangling itself in your hair, even if you threw your head right at it right now. The strange quality is emitting from its lucky horseshoe nose. Unlike the other bats which use their mouths, its gliding stops and floats are mirrored in its calls. Its nose focuses its sonar as a great aerial tracking device as it zooms in on its prey, flying quite low to avoid bad weather. And then, of course, there's the pipistrelle bat. This little old favourite is flying just above our heads. The wings are narrow in shape, giving it a very rapid but also very chaotic zigzag flight and call. It's hunting along its individual hunting beats, often flying repeatedly in circles over the same ground, a nervous flyer reflected in its staccato chirps. And if you listen again to the pipistrelle, you'll hear a familiar rasping sound. There it is. That is the sound of a mosquito being eaten. Yes, that's the feeding buzz, the sound of one of our fellow night creatures' last moments, the equivalent of a death rattle. And here comes the noctule, not wanting to miss out. A very handsome bat with a chip-chop bop. The noctule is a strong and high flyer, reaching speeds of up to 50 kilometers an hour. It flies straight, alternating between shallow and deep wing strokes, which it resonates in its call. Just like one of those daring young men on their flying machines, catching insects on the wing. And finally, let us not forget the brown long-eared bat, or nervous, as it's nicknamed. He's hunting in close proximity to his roost. Rather than using echolocation to catch prey, he uses his long ears to listen to insects, which he then gleans from vegetation. His echolocation call is faint. He feeds intermittently through the night. He's a very agile flyer. He's able to hover, flight, and circle with ease. As you open your eyes to the world again, do you feel comfortable with seeing an ultraviolet light flashing round upon you? Does it make you feel self-conscious and good about yourself as your teeth, spots, and ears show up? Bats see well enough with their eyes, especially those daytime vegetation flyers that care to pollinate. The carnivorous bats explored the nighttime and soon realized by seeing with sound they could avoid daytime predators and gain nighttime prey. But what of this ultraviolet light? Rainforest flowers that reflect ultraviolet light may help guide the colourblind bat to their nectar like a harbour beacon guides a ship to shore at night. The bat's sensitivity to ultraviolet light is one facet of an evolved symbiotic relationship between the bat and the flowers. The flowers provide the bat's food in the form of nectar, while the bats help pollinate the flowers. Or what about a sudden shock of white light? Great for helping us find the exit quickly in emergency, but will the blind bats, they'll get confused. They can't fly. They don't know what they're doing, like us now after being in the dark, since we've grown accustomed to the night. So how do bats negotiate each other en masse and in the dark and never, ever collide? With lightning flash reactions and great aeronautical skills. We know as a species en masse a Mexican wave is feasible, as all people can keep in order in such a place. But what if we were all feeding on the same food? It would be chaos, and quite probably same species murder. But not perhaps if we use sonar. So, can we perceive the world in the same way as a bat? Or could we? Some of us already can. Some fellow Homo sapiens who don't have the use of their eyes have developed the skills to echolocate most proficiently. They don't move as fast as a bat, but then we don't have wings yet. But others do have imaginations. And when you go out into the night tonight, you're at least aware of its echoes and potentials. And it's our imaginations which can speed things up and slow them down and adapt even our given environments to how we choose to perceive them. Our own imagination, which has the capacity to experiment and evolve. For its darkness, in this moment, we can do anything we want and be anything we want. And when the light comes, carrying out our rational minds, with it, we can figure out how and why then. In our space here, if we want a robin to sing sweetly, but differently, then it will, sweetly but ever so slowly, like time expanded, so that it doesn't appear to be a robin anymore as it shapeshifts into anything your imagination allows it to. And as we create our own window onto the outside world, where the bats are thinking of hibernating tonight, and close our eyes onto this artificial night, let us remember that what you see and hear might not be what you think it is, but what you perceive it to be in this moment. The outside world behind the curtain we expect to be a darkness, but it's replaced by man-made light. The equilibrium is broken. I think it's true to say the moment, as we understand it, is a powerful tool. Go into the night and use the moment wisely.